There's some folks I want to acknowledge today. 160 people in this church have just spent 7 weeks in small group circles, getting to know each other and exploring deep spiritual questions. And I am so proud of all of you who were able to participate. So if you were able to be a part of our small study circles, would you please stand? Because we want to acknowledge you. Please stand. Yay. Awesome. I am so grateful to all of you for participating, because as you have gone deeper, you have lifted the consciousness of all of us. So thank you for that. And today we have another question to consider. Today's question is, what did Jesus do on Monday? Now, here's the thing. I've got to be truthful. We came up with that question as a title for our service because we thought it was catchy, not because we had an answer. But I can always make one up. So that's what I'm going to do. I've been hypothesizing this week about what did Jesus do on Monday? And the first answer that comes to everybody's mind, and I think it might just be the best, is that he took a nap. He'd had a pretty busy weekend, and he didn't get his usual Sabbath, right? I mean, so I don't know. None of us knows exactly what happened on that Saturday Sabbath in the tomb, but there was some serious work going on in there, some serious transformation. So maybe he took a much-deserved nap on Monday. Of course, I got a theory I like better. See if you like this one. I have this image that on Monday, Jesus got together with all the prophets that had come before. There was Muhammad and Confucius and there was Moses, and they were all there. Couldn't wait to welcome Jesus, so they sat down and had tea, or more likely wine, together and celebrated. And can't you just hear them fist bumping and high-fiving each other? Like, way to go, Jesus. That was really some miracle. Moses would say, dude, I thought parting the Red Seas was something else. But you had miracle after miracle. They just didn't quit. And that last one, we were all rooting for you. That's kind of a nice image, isn't it, to think? Here's the truth. We don't actually know how long Jesus kept reappearing to his disciples. In the Bible, it just says later he would come back to them, so we don't know. He was probably still checking in on his folks on Monday, as it were. And besides, we know that the quantum physicists tell us today there really is no such thing as linear time, that it's somehow beyond our own human comprehension. Things are sort of happening simultaneously in some realm of this world that we don't fully grasp. So I don't know exactly what happened on Monday. The real question is, what do you and I do on Easter Monday? What do you and I do after the resurrection? We spent the last several weeks speaking about how we have personal crucifixions in our lives and personal spiritual resurrections in our own lives. Great tragedy might happen in our life, and that causes us to go so deep within that a part of us dies, literally. So what do we do when we wake up from the dead? That resurrecting experience in you and me is when we wake up from the dead. We have a new awakening, a clearer vision of some sort. And how is it that you and I are to be with that new and clearer vision? This last week, a friend of mine and I spoke. She asked me to give her a call. She's a friend that, we go way back, way back, and yet we don't have frequent interaction with each other, an occasional email here or there. It had been a long time since we had spoken, over a year, I'm sure. And she shared with me that her drinking had finally got the best of her. She shared with me that she had just gotten out of a rehabilitation facility, that she had to admit that she was an alcoholic. And she'd spent 30 days in rehabilitation and is now in the outpatient season of that experience, going to meetings and continuing to see her counselor. And she shared with me about how it is that she has a whole new worldview. You see, she She would sit and watch that show, maybe some of you have seen it, called Intervention. And she would watch that show and wish for an intervention in her life, but not know how to go about that. I didn't know that she was an alcoholic. I had not known that. And she's now adjusting to how life will be with this new understanding, this new awakening that she has, this hopefulness that she has. You know, she's lost some of her friends. She doesn't want to go out with the girls and drink anymore. She lost her job in the process. She's lost a lot. And now, she has a whole new way of looking at the world. And she says that she never could have gotten to this place if it hadn't been for her faith. Somewhere in her, she found the faith to call her brothers, and both of them came to support her in finding a rehabilitation center. They participated with her in the family part of the program and are continuing to give her support. And she wanted me to know what she's been through. I'm so impressed with her courage. Those of you in the room who are in recovery, you know the courage it takes. And those of you who are family members of people in recovery, you know the courage that it takes. She's been through a crucifixion and a resurrection. But here's the thing. I don't know about you, but we come to church on Easter Sunday and we have this great big celebration, and it's like the work's done. But it's Monday. Today's Monday. It's the day the work begins. You know, where are you once you've had that awakening? Where are you once you have that new understanding of how to live life? That's when the work starts, and that's when it's starting for my friend. She gave me permission to share her story today with you. And to me, it's the perfect example of the crucifixion and the resurrection and the Easter Monday, because now she's got meetings in front of her. She's got discipline in front of her, and she has faith, and she has hope, and she has support. And it's one day at a time. It's one breath at a time, one moment at a time. There's another story that I want to tell you. This also happened this week. I have another friend whom I happened to talk to this week as well. Another friend we don't talk to very often. It was her birthday, and she is now 5 years breast cancer free. And I remember still the first time I spoke to her after her treatment had completed. And what I heard on the phone, even across the miles, was that she had changed. She was different. She no longer saw life the way she had seen it before. You know that expression that there's a book and it's titled something like, "Don't sweat the small stuff." And P.S., it's all small stuff. Well, now I know if you're in the middle of something really big right now, it doesn't seem small to you. But what I'm trying to capture for you is that my friend, having been through a life-threatening experience, having faced her own mortality, sees life completely differently. She has a new understanding of how it is to live. And boy, does she take care of herself now. No matter what the challenges are, and she has them, she knows what she needs to do to take care of herself, and she does. The Tibetan Buddhists have a particular spiritual practice. It's called the death meditation. Maybe you know of it. It actually has two pieces to it. One piece is to actually contemplate and mentally rehearse a smooth and peaceful passing from this world. And that's important to the Tibetan Buddhists, as they believe it helps ease the soul's transition. There's another part of it, this death meditation, and it's about envisioning that if you were to die tomorrow, what would your life perspective be? It sounds like it's rather morbid, but the truth of it is it's very life-affirming. It's asking the question, so if I weren't going to be here anymore, how would I regard my life? And when you ask those questions, it can empower you to make changes if you're guided to. You know, you're in that Easter Monday experience. Are there action steps or changes or transformations to happen in your life now that you have whatever new awarenesses that you have? So reflecting on your life, living as if you were dying, so to speak, can be a very life-affirming way to look at your world. I can only imagine. Can you imagine what it must have been like for the disciples after Jesus' physical body was not there for them anymore? Whoa, that's when the real work began, wasn't it? So I happened across a book, and the book is called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And actually, the truth is, I encountered a Facebook, not a Facebook post, but a web posting of an article written about this book, and it so intrigued me that I purchased the book, and I've been reading it over the weekend. The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, written by Bronnie Ware. And Bronnie Ware was a palliative care helper for people who were making their transition in life. She wasn't a registered nurse, but she had this natural intuition for how to be with people who were dying. And she would be their caregiver for, months or weeks, whatever it might be at the time. And this book is about her journey. It's about stories of what she learned from one person to the next. And she drew some conclusions, some common regrets that they would voice, because she had this gift. You know how some people have the gift, you just open your heart to them even if you've never met them before? Well, she had that gift, obviously, as you read her book. And so she's concluded there are 5 regrets. Now, if you can twist these regrets, each one into a tool for living today. So you may want to write these down. There are 5 of them. We're going to talk about them one at a time. And I invite you, if you're guided, to write them down. So here's the first regret that she said almost everyone had. Almost everyone said, I wish I'd had the courage to live life true to myself. I wish I'd had the courage to live life true to myself. She said, it's almost like people are living someone else's life in their shoes. Do you ever feel that way? Like maybe you're living your parents' life, the life they wanted for themselves, but you're living it. Or maybe you're living the life society expected, or what have you, but somehow you're not really being true to yourself. She tells a story about one woman in particular. This woman was in her early 80s, and she had lived the life that society expected of her. And that was that she was a dutiful wife and mother, despite the fact that her husband could be at times tyrannical. She didn't describe or define what tyrannical meant, but there were times when he was a tyrant. And she would have thought to leave, but that's not what women in her station did. And so she stayed in that marriage. And as they entered their 80s together, he grew ill enough to need nursing home care. Well, that had an oddly freeing effect upon this woman. As her husband was in the nursing home, suddenly she felt she would be free to live the life she'd wanted to live, and she began to make plans about traveling and this and that. But only a few months after he went into the nursing care facility, she grew ill. It turned out she was terminally ill. And so she vented and shared this story, this sadness, this regret with Bronnie about how it was that she never stood in who she truly was. She wished she had lived a different life. She wished she had lived a life true to herself, and she could see now that she could have made those choices, but somehow she never felt she was able to do that. Do you know someone who's not living as their true self in their true life? It's a sad way to be. But the invitation is, see, when you live like you're dying, when that Tibetan Buddhist meditation, you're asking these questions now while you're very much alive, and you're able to contemplate them at such depth that they might prompt an action step for you. So the second greatest regret of the people that Bronnie dealt with, and she said almost every man had this regret, and some women, and that regret was, I wish I hadn't worked so much. I wish I hadn't worked so much. Being that Bronnie mostly dealt with people who were up in years, many of her women patients had not actually worked. So this was something that was more predominant in men, but we would see it today across the board. And the point that was made in the book was not that work is bad. Work is not bad. And some of her clients loved their work, were passionate about their work. There was great purpose in their work. It wasn't that necessarily that the work was bad. It was all that they missed by solely working. It was the time with their children and their spouses and themselves that they missed by not working. One man who worked, and in fact, his wife begged him to retire, and he just couldn't. He couldn't find a way to. He said, pardon my language here, he said, "I worked too damn hard, and now I am a lonely, dying man. The worst part is that I've been lonely for the whole of my retirement, and I need not have been." I need not have been. So again, the point is not that work is bad. It's making a choice for how you spend your time, making a conscious choice to notice what you might be missing. The third wish that Bronnie talks about is this one: I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. You know, something happens when you're approaching the end of life, and as a minister, I've noticed this. People often, not always, often become more forthcoming, more willing to risk. There is no risk anymore. What do you risk if you speak your feelings? There's no risk anymore. And some look back on their life and wish they had been willing to take those risks earlier. She talks in particular about this one family that did not have the norm of expressing their feelings. They didn't seem to know how to, evidently, and the father was making his transition. And the family and the doctor all conspired to not tell him he was dying. They thought it was the best decision for him. And some of you may have made that decision yourself for family members and were guided to know it was the right thing to do at that time. Well, that's how his family was guided. And it also in particular made sense because they weren't a family to talk about feelings and truth anyway. And yet he continued to get worse. He was visibly getting worse. But the family would continue to say, "Oh, just eat a little more. You'll feel better. You're going to feel better tomorrow." And finally, one day, he looked at Bronnie and he said, "Am I dying?" And Bronnie could not lie to him. And she said, "Yes, you're dying." And he said, "Thank you. Thank you for being truthful. Thank you for telling me. Thank you so much." And then they began to explore. She explored with him how he might let his family know that he was aware that he was dying. And he concluded that no, he couldn't do that. They wouldn't be able to cope. It was easier, safer to live at a particular level, which Bronnie did not judge. The beautiful thing about this book is she judges no one's life experience. She judged none of the family members who said or did whatever they said or did. She was just there to be a blessing. So she did not judge that. And yet, as you read the story, what you get is that here is the byproduct of a family that has never been able to speak authentically and share their feelings. I wish I'd had the courage to speak my feelings and emotions. Is there someone in your life today that if you knew you weren't going to be here tomorrow, or you knew they weren't going to be here tomorrow, you would want them to know something in your heart? Is there something in your heart that is seeking expression? Well, guess what, folks? It's Monday. It's Easter Monday. There's no time like today. It's one day at a time. There's no time like today to reach out to your son or to your mother or to your long-lost friend and to tell them the feelings, whatever they might be in your heart, feelings of reconciliation, feelings of forgiveness, feelings of love. Maybe there's someone. I can see it by the nods in the room. So that's number 3. Now, the fourth Regret relates definitely to number 3. The fourth regret is, I wish I'd kept up with my friends. I wish I'd kept up with my friends. Now, some of you are very good at that, I'm sure. Some of us are not so good at that. My husband's great at it. I tell you, he makes friends along the way, and he's kept up with all of them. The friends from each place of business, he stays in touch with them. And I've not done such a, I sure I have some friends, but I'm not near as good at it as he is. And what some of the people would share with Bronnie is that dying can be a very lonely thing when you've not kept up with your friends, when you don't have those connections anymore. And we have the gift, you and I today, of the internet, of Facebook, of LinkedIn, of all those ways. There's just about nobody you couldn't find if you wanted to, right? Just about, yeah, some of you might laugh at that. There's just about nobody that couldn't find you if they wanted to, right? And so the question is, do you want to? It hasn't been that long ago that I reached out and called a childhood friend. She was such a good friend that she was in my wedding and I was in her wedding. And then we went about 10 years before we saw each other, and it's been 20 years. No, that's not true. It's been about 13 years since I've last actually seen her. But I picked up the phone and called her, and oh my gosh, we had a wonderful conversation. It was so good to just reconnect. Are there friends that you wonder how they're doing? Maybe you'd like to reconnect with them? There's really no risk. You won't be any worse off than you are right now, right? And yet there are heart connections that you have with people all over this world. And I can imagine that were I facing my final days, I might look back and wish I'd stayed in better connection with people. You know, our relationships, they're the greatest school of learning that we have. So that's regret number 4. And the last regret is, I wish that I had let myself be happier. I wish that I had let myself be happier. Now, isn't that interesting languaging? I mean, you would think that people would say, well, I wish that I'd been happier. I wish that, I'd married so-and-so, or I wish that I'd had that job, or those would have made me happy. But what people begin to get as they approach the end of life is, I wish I had let myself be happier. I wish I had allowed myself to be happier. Bronnie tells a story of this one woman who had lived a hard driving life. She had lived it as pretty much of a dictator, telling people what to do, getting all of her requests honored in that sort of a way, but she was never happy. And it wasn't until she and Bronnie began to talk and philosophize that she got it, that happiness is a choice. She said, I wish I'd let myself be happier. What a miserable person I have been. I just didn't think I deserved to be. Get it? I just didn't think I deserved to be happy. But I do. It's really our choice, isn't it? She asked. Now, I know if you're facing certain challenges in your life right now, you might not think that it's a choice to be happy. But what Bronnie learned from the people who were approaching their end of days was that they feel they could have made a choice. They could have made different choices to be happy, to allow happiness in spite of whatever might have been going on. That's a big one. One of the things I noticed in this book is that Bronnie goes from story to story, and then she weaves in her own insights, her own awakenings. And with each new awakening, it takes time for it to settle in. She doesn't just have the awakening and then go on. It's like she has a new insight about life, or about love, or about the meaning and purpose of the world. She gets a new insight, and then it kind of has to seep in. It's that one day at a time. And sometimes we get defeated because we have insights and we have awakenings and we make commitments. And sure enough, a year later, we're facing the same one again. But it's never really the same one. It has a new nuance because we're a different person at that point. It's deeper or it's higher. We just circle around the spiral. We come up to it again. But we're not quite the same each time we do. All these awakenings about life. So What did Jesus do on Monday? See, I think it's about us. I think it's about what we're to do on Monday. But in the case of Jesus, I think that on Monday with quotes, he continued to visit the people he loved. And I think that he continues to do that moment by moment, day by day. I think that whenever we call upon him, he is there. We know that the Christ lives in us. We know that the Christ lives in us. It is the power within us. Our theme for this year is discover the power within you. The power within you is the Christ. It's the infinite power. It's so that when you have those resurrection moments, those new awakenings, and before you just let it go, the Christ is there to keep moving you forward. It's the voice that spoke to my friend to say, now's the time to call your brothers. I'll be there with you. You know, at the end of the book of Matthew, Jesus says, I will be with you always. Lo, I will be with you always. So I think that there's this Easter Monday happening every single day of our lives. And on this Easter Monday, the Christ is there with us, with you, with me. So I have a question for you to ponder. You've heard all these different regrets of the dying. Regrets like, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I'd let myself be happier. I wished I'd had the courage to share my emotions. I wish I'd reached out to my friends. I wish I'd lived my true life. And my question to you today is this. What decision or action could you make in this moment that if you made it, would change your life? What decision or action could you make in this moment that if you made it, could change your life for the better? Now just think a minute. Just think, and it might be small. It might be a friend that you're wanting to reach out to. It might be a family member you want to tell that you love them. It might be a decision to go to the gym today. What might it be? Could it be that today is the day that you will choose to get sober? Maybe today you will choose to get sober again. You know, on the back of our bulletin, we list a number of 12-step groups that meet here. There's one meeting just about every day of the week. If you need help with an addiction, you call us, let us know. We have spiritual counselors who will help you through that process. You show up in a meeting, and that's where it starts, one day at a time. So I don't know, what is the decision you could make right here, right now, in this room of faith? When something comes to you, if something has come to you, if you have an idea of what that choice could be, I invite you to stand. I'm not asking you to make a commitment, but if you have something in mind, an action step, a decision that you could make, just stand right now. Just stand in this place of faith. A decision, an action, a change that you could make that would change your life. And others of you that it hasn't quite come yet, too, if you pray about it, it will. If you pray and ask the wisdom of the living Christ in you to guide you, what is the change, the decision that you could make today that would change your life for the good, it will come to you. And so here we are in this room of faith, of people who believe in you. Welcome. Welcome to Monday. Welcome to this moment. Welcome to your life. God bless you.